more common to be able to prepare for. As we get into this game, we'll have to see what we're going to see from both of these trainers. It is just Chien-Pao and Dragonite immediately coming out from YVAR. Then it's Incineroar and Miraidon for Kevin.
Okay, Hydron Engine going up first, and then the Sword of Ruin, really crucially information there. Miraidon and Chien-Pao having the same speed stat means that that's really crucial information for both players here. So it could be that a potential speed tie, but it also could be that this Miraidon is naturally faster than this Chien-Pao, maybe saying that it's adamant-natured instead of that jolly nature. And of course then Incineroar following up with the Intimidate. It's always going to be slower than the other two.
Yeah, of course it is, and it's not going to be too impactful into the Dragonite, of course. Yeah, the Chien-Pao with the Focus Sash is almost always run as fast as possible, whether that's adamant or jolly. But the Miraidon actually could have just gone for the attack there if it was the faster, but just immediately switching out into the Lunala.
Perhaps afraid of the double priority double up there with the extreme speed and the Sucker Punch, which wouldn't have mattered with speeds whatsoever. So here is a Terra here. Yes, we aren't going to see this too much over the next few weeks after today or tomorrow. So let's enjoy it while we can. That Terra normal onto the Dragonite, which has been so good at doing across multiple regulations, locking in with a much better defensive typing, and yeah, a great switch from Kevin there, switching in what was going to take a lot of damage and absolutely almost nothing now going into this first turn.
Yeah, but that was actually quite a lot of damage from that knockoff into the Dragonite. That is a huge momentum swing immediately for Kevin there. Very nicely done. The Ice Shard and Extreme Speed would have been able to knock out that Miraidon, and I think even if it had gone for a defensive terrestrialization, because that Extreme Speed is so powerful when paired with the Chien-Pao, but now it's really not going to be doing the damage that you want now that Dragonite doesn't have its choice band anymore. So really, really nicely done. At least you did go for Ice Shard and break the Shadow Shield on the opposing Lunala, because there's no Sucker Punch available on the Chien-Pao. It did have to be that as the priority, but that is one of the benefits now. Sucker Punch fails on a switch, but Ice Shard still does that damage, and any damage into a Lunala on the first hit to break Shadow Shield is always impactful.
100%, especially when you have a 4x weakness there in the dark and that Ghost type on Lunala that means that you can one-hit KO it with something like an Incineroar that might be coming in here with the threat of that knockoff going into the next turn. But first, the responding Terra now from Kevin's end, and it's going to be that Lunala. Makes sense. You want to go with that Terra Fairy, which is otherwise largely uncontested on YVAR's team, apart from that Zamazenta that could be in the back, but has Heavy Slam, which doesn't do a whole lot of damage anyway. So first of all, it's that Crunch. Yep. But that Terra, again, Kevin playing very defensive. Flare Blitz into the imposing Incineroar 2. Again, a defensive play from YVAR. So not a lot of damage being traded at the moment, but it's going to be that Trick Room now that Kevin's setting up. So I think we might see a bit more of a momentum swing going into the following turns.
Yeah, now that Chien-Pao's going to be very threatened by either the Moonblast or even just the Flare Blitz here. So at least the Lunala has become fake-outable, and again, I'm not going to be able to say that too much when Terra disappears, but yes, the Lunala is now fake-outable, so you can put a stop to Chien-Pao being KO'd this turn to a double-up by the Incineroar going for fake-out into either target here. I think I'd prefer the Lunala, mainly because you don't want to be taking a Moonblast for massive damage, but I guess as well, the Incineroar could be going for U-turn rather than Flare Blitz to be able to break the focus session. Maybe you want to put a stop to that pivoting action, because if Ursaluna gets a free switch in, that could be very, very devastating.
But it's Zamazenta coming in first, though. Daunted Shield activating for the first time and the only time in every game. Flare Blitz into the Lunala, though, doing under half damage generally there. But getting a burn there, that could make a difference here in this game versus a very bulky Pokemon and seems to be what is quite a long-paced game as well. So that damage is going to add up. But first of all, Kevin's U-turn going first inside the Trick Room at the moment here, which is maybe not exactly what you want. You might want to be going after YVAR's Pokemon have moved, but it looks like Kevin's going to have to bring in something at the moment to bring in. It is that Urshifu, so going absolutely last, and then it's the Lunala straight up afterwards. So interesting speed interactions here, dealing a lot of damage to that Incineroar, and then the burn chip on that Lunala once again.
Yeah, so it seems like the Incineroar on YVAR's is pretty slow if it got that Flare Blitz off first, so should still be underspeeding the Urshifu. Yes, you can Aqua Jet to be able to KO the Incineroar even in the Trick Room, but you really want to be going for Surging Strikes here, and I don't think you actually mind if the Incineroar goes first, because the Flare Blitz shouldn't KO the Lunala from the range it's at, and the burn will actually add up quite significantly over time. But the Urshifu's in quite a nice position because the Zamazenta can't go for its terrestrialization anymore because the Dragonite went for it immediately. You could just go for that Surging Strikes into the Zamazenta very, very comfortably here.
But first, it's going to be a knockoff to reduce that damage a little bit in that choice band. So that is one way of reduce the Urshifoo's damage here. You can't intimidate it, but a Moonblast following up, though, into Zamazenta. With that Terra boost, not as much as you might hope, but at the end of the day, it is a Zamazenta. It is super bulky. So there's that Surging Strike, as you called out, Jamie, doing a lot of damage there generally, and perhaps now putting it in range of another Moonblast from Kevin's Lunala here. So what is it going to respond to, though? It is that body press into the Urshifoo. Big damage, but it's not a KO very crucially here, and it might be able to get another attack off here if Incineroar does not target it down.
Yeah, but now that the choice ban has been knocked off, it can just switch up into Aqua Jet into the Incineroar instead. So if you hadn't have knocked off the choice ban, you could have been able to KO with Flare Blitz now because it would have been locked into that. But then you had to knock off in order for Zamazenta to be able to survive that attack. Based on that damage, the choice ban might have been able to tip it over the edge into a KO. It had been quite close. But yeah, now you can go for Aqua Jet into Incineroar and then Moongeist Beam into the Zamazenta, or maybe Moonblast once again. The reason why he's going for Moonblast, even though it's a tiny bit weaker than Moongeist Beam, is because there is a Terra Normal Dragonite that could be switching in on that. So I think Moonblast is still probably preferred here. It's not going to be the Aqua Jet. The Urshifoo is instead switching out.
So it has to be that Incineroar now coming in at the back here. Well, it could have also been the Miraidon, but Incineroar is a very nice switch in here into steel moves that could come out from Zamazenta in that Heavy Slam or into the Incineroar. Perhaps be able to keep this Lunala alive from this Flare Blitz, which it does. Great switch in from Kevin there, because now Lunala should be able to follow up here with what's likely that Moongeist Beam there. Okay, so basically banking on that Zamazenta staying in, doing enough damage, and is getting that KO on that very powerful Restricted. And the only one YVAR brought to this game.
Yeah, it does seem so. So that's a very, very nice swing of momentum once again for Kevin, but you can see the impact of that burn. That's been 3 turns now that the burn has been adding up on, and it's down into the red, so probably is in range of even the Ice Shards coming out from the Chien-Pao. And you've got either Pokemon coming in, the Dragonite or the Chien-Pao, that will have access to that priority. I'd probably prefer the Dragonite, mainly because the Incineroar just switched in and has Fake Out pressure, but it is going to be the Chien-Pao instead. So you can go for a Fake Out into that, and then potentially double up with a Moonblast, but Lunala's surely got to be in range of that Incineroar on Eval's side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are the last turn of Trick Room now, and so YVAR kind of going for safely for the Protect on Chien-Pao's end to kind of make sure you just don't get doubled up here, like a really obvious Protect here. So let's see if Kevin kind of takes advantage of that.
Yeah, we'll see. No Fake Outs coming out. It's just Flare Blitz, and that's just a little bit of chip damage into that opposing Incineroar. Not quite KOing itself to the Flare Blitz, but that U-turn will definitely do it. Gonna get that Incineroar for Kevin right out of there, pivoting back out. Lunala won't be able to do anything this turn because the Chien-Pao is protecting, but Trick Room's about to run out, and we did see that the Miraidon was theoretically faster than the opposing Chien-Pao, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that come in. But at the same time, Urshifoo, yep, it is going to be the Urshifoo coming in. You've still got Aqua Jet potential to be able to get that priority going when the Trick Room is about to expire.
And it's just, we're interested to see actually if the Urshifoo is naturally faster than the Dragonite as well, as they both have Aqua Jet or both have priority moves, but with the extreme speed on Dragonite's end, that actually is naturally higher priority than Aqua Jet does. So even if the Urshifoo was naturally faster than the Dragonite, extreme speed would still come out first and be able to snipe that Urshifoo down, and then the Chien-Pao can safely target down the Lunala in this turn too.
Yeah, I think what Kevin's probably going for here is just sacrifice both the Lunala and the Urshifoo to get that paid switch into both Incineroar and Miraidon. Then you can go for Fake Out's Chien-Pao, Electro Drift into the Dragonite. You won't be KO'd because the extreme speed won't be as powerful without the choice ban, and then the Incineroar will theoretically just beat that Chien-Pao.
So there's the extreme speed into that Urshifoo, as you've choreographed so far, Jamie. Let's see how this plays out. And yeah, Chien-Pao's definitely going to be faster here. We know this Lunala isn't going to be able to take any hits at the moment. So yeah, 100% accurate. Crunch into that Lunala, setting up for this end game now, where Kevin gets to bring in that really fresh Miraidon and that Incineroar for that extra Fake Out.
Yeah, this should be pretty straightforward now for Kevin. I don't think there's anything that can particularly stop just Fake Out into Chien-Pao, Electro Drift into Dragonite. Because this Chien-Pao doesn't have Sacred Sword, that's very uncommon in Regulation I for Chien-Pao to be able to have access to. Therefore, this Intimidate's going to stick on the Chien-Pao, and it just really won't be able to do the damage to the Incineroar. So maybe you need to go for the extreme speed into the opposing Incineroar to try and get that chip damage, and then bank on the fact that Icicle Crash can critical hit the Miraidon to KO it, and that it was a speed tie, and you actually do end up moving first before the Miraidon. But I think at this point, Fake Out and Electro Drift, that should be able to seal the game.
So yeah, YVAR going for the safe protect there, knowing Kevin's out at the moment and knowing that YVAR likely needs to go for some critical hits to be able to get this game. So here's the fake out. What is coming next? It's probably going to be that extreme speed from this Dragonite to get as much damage as possible. Can it put this Miraidon or Incineroar in range of a Chien-Pao attack? That definitely is going to do a lot of damage. But yeah, as you said, the Electro Drift here, it is that choice specs now. Dragonite's bulky, but not that bulky. Sorry, Dragonite, down you go. And now it's all down to this Chien-Pao for YVAR.
Yeah, but we saw, as we pointed out on that very first turn, or even turn 0, as it were, that the electric terrain activated before the Sword of Ruin, so we should be seeing that Miraidon move first. If the Icicle Crash does end up moving first, it does need a critical hit or a flinch. And I don't even think a flinch would help at this point, because the Incineroar can go for U-turn and then Flare Blitz to KO the opposing Chien-Pao, but it is still going to be that Miraidon moving first, so that will be the first game for Kevin.
Yeah, there it is. Going down to that Focus Sash here, and Chien-Pao should be able to knock out this Incineroar. But, Jamie, surely it could still be a speed tie, potentially.
I guess so.
Surely. And then, like, Chien-Pao can then still kind of get an Icicle Crash off next turn if it decides to win the speed tie this turn.
It decides to win the speed tie. Sure. I wish that my Pokemon just decided to win the speed
yours
tie.
Yours just don't?
No.
Oh, right.
No, about half the time they don't. We'll have to see. No, Miraidon's still moving first. Okay, so consistently moving first there for the Miraidon. But even if that had been a speed tie and the Chien-Pao would have moved first, it would have either had to be multiple Icicle Crash flinches because of the Intimidates or a critical hit. So the odds were still way in Kevin's favor, but we've seen the Miraidon consistently move first, take that KO, and take the first game for Kevin.
Okay. Kevin's obviously feeling pretty good right now, and with that Miraidon kind of endgame there, seal that up really nicely after kind of dealing all that little extra chip damage into YVAR's Pokemon there. Like, we saw like plenty of really good defensive switches there for Kevin. Do you think YVAR could be able to capitalize a little bit more, even if the same Pokemon were brought in the game too?
Yeah, I think so. Like, the first turn was a massive momentum swing in Kevin's favor, because all YVAR was able to achieve was break the Shadow Shield, but then lost the Choice Band on the Dragonite for the sake of that. And you saw in the endgame, the Incineroar would have been KO'd to the Choice Band Extreme Speed, but not the just regular old Extreme Speed, even though it took a huge amount of damage, not quite enough. So I think YVAR needs to be careful of that, because it might be quite telegraphed that, yes, Extreme Speed and Ice Shard is KOing this Miraidon, so I will defensively switch. But I don't think there's really a true punish to that, apart from going for Crunch into the Miraidon, which actually is still entirely reasonable. You do pretty respectable damage, and Crunch and Extreme Speed should be able to KO. But there's no reason why Kevin can't also switch it up here. There could be the Whimsicott adjustment going for Tailwind as well. You could just immediately lead with the Lunala and set Trick Room up. So there's still adaptations that can come out from Kevin's side of the field, but I do think YVAR does need to do something on his end.
It's quite tricky when you're leading with like choice-banded Pokemon, for instance, then because you lock yourself in so hard, don't you, into your game plan. But it doesn't look like it's the Dragonite lead this time. It is that Chien-Pao, but now with the Zamazenta for YVAR, and it's going to be the Miraidon and the Incineroar for Kevin.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to assume at this point that it is an adamant Chien-Pao, given that it was still the Hadron Engine activating before that Chien-Pao's Sword of Ruin. We might just see a double protect here, because it would get rid of the fake-out turn and also see what the Miraidon is locking itself into, and then you can adjust from there. And I don't really see too many downsides. There's no reason to take a risk here, but we are seeing actually just immediate terrestrialization coming out straight away from that Incineroar of all things.
Okay, since we're not going into that Terra Bug, which has been really popular in Regulation Set I specifically, because you can then resist Zamazenta's Body Press without them being weak to counteract Shadow Rider's attacks, for instance. So Kevin kind of respecting the option of YVAR just going straight for the attacks here. But yeah, as you said, Jamie, there's kind of not a lot of reason for YVAR to not do this play, unless he's predicting a Whimsicott in the back here. But it's really paid out for YVAR here, because not only has he seen that Miraidon's locked into Volt Switch, but also that Kevin spent the Terra instantly on this turn, which really leads this Miraidon wide open, because it can't go for that defensive Terra Fairy in front of this Chien-Pao.
Yeah, I think that was quite a preemptive Terra there for Kevin, given how, like, no drawback-wise double protect was coming out from YVAR, because it burns two things. It burns the fake out and also sees what the Miraidon locks into. So, but like, obviously the Incineroar didn't go for fake out, so on this turn I think it would have been incredibly reasonable to go for that defensive terrestrialization, but now it's easier for YVAR to be able to adjust around that. You're probably not going to body press this Incineroar anymore. It's very likely to be a target down into the Miraidon instead, or even just heavy slam into the Incineroar if you want to be doing some respectable damage as well. But now you can also just Icicle Crash and Crunch the Incineroar for really good damage.
So here comes Volt Switch first. It's that Chien-Pao. That is so much damage from what is otherwise a relatively weaker move on that 70 base power, but just showing the power of Miraidon with that Choice Specs, and why Kevin has thought, right, why did we ever switch off of this Choice Specs Pokemon, right? Let's get back into this. So Kevin's going to think about what they need to bring in at the moment here, because obviously Zamazenta and this Chien-Pao are still yet to attack here. And so Urshifu, given its typing, is probably a nice defensive switch, as we can see into this crunch.
Yeah, if that would have been Lunala, that would have done a huge amount of damage. But, of course, the body press helped with Sword of Ruin does huge damage and is able to pick up the KO on that Urshifu. I think that crunch chip was probably necessary to get that KO. But speaking of KOs, a Terra-boosted U-turn coming out from the Incineroar, able to do that one last bit of HP to the Chien-Pao, knock itself out, and get that pivoting going once again.
Good job, Incineroar, with that Terra bug, making great use of that U-turn there. And so, yeah, with Miraidon in the back that could still come in, at least you can lock yourself into something else at the moment. And you can maybe go into Electro Drift instead this time, because then you can at least try and threaten a little bit more damage down to this Zamazenta, which is otherwise quite an issue. But now Lunala is on the field this time, activating that Electric Seed, which is exactly what you want here. But yeah, thing is, with that pivoting action, YVAR has the ability now to respond to what Kevin has brought in.
Yeah, and can't defensively terrestrialize the Lunala anymore, so in the face of this Incineroar that's switching in for YVAR, that might be an issue, but of course you're going to intimidate it with your own Incineroar, and you've got the Electric Seed, and therefore you don't have an item, so Knockoff won't be doing as much damage, and also the Shadow Shield is completely intact at the moment. So it seems like we're seeing the Incineroar on Kevin's side of the field get that Intimidate first. We saw the Incineroar on YVAR's side move first in Trick Room, so that is likely going to be the speed order once again coming out from both these trainers. So that means that Kevin has the fake out advantage on this turn, but no fake outs once again.
Okay, I think we saw YVAR locked in here, and it's a knockoff coming up later for this Incineroar, but not before the Moongeist beam first. Into that Zamazenta, dealing probably the necessary chip to put it in range of what Miraidon has in the back. And so yeah, there's the faster U-turn coming out from Kevin's end, doing, yeah, Terra boosted. That's great, Incineroar. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, Miraidon should be coming in at the moment now, but I think YVAR is definitely going to get off this knockoff. But it is a -1, and without an item. Do you think it's going to KO, Jamie?
Lunala's incredibly bulky. I think it's going to survive this attack, even though it is quite effective. Yeah, you can see that actually shrugging it off quite comfortably.
Yeah, that's pretty fair, honestly. And actually may still not be in range of a heavy slam coming out from the Zamazenta either, given how much damage it did through the Shadow Shield too. So it might be safe enough to kind of still get off one more attack before the Incineroar can then take it down with another knockoff in this turn. But now you can see both these Pokemon are very much in range of Miraidon attacks. But where do you target down if you're Kevin?
Yeah, I know, you were just scoffing at the U-turn damage, but that U-turn damage has probably put the Incineroar into range of Electro Drift, right? So, well, it's not Electro Drift, though. It is Volt Switch instead. Electro Drift would have done it there.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's been put in range of another U-turn. So actually could be quite impactful here, especially because obviously the Incineroar's coming in for that another round of Intimidate, right?
Yeah, it's set up your Incineroar so you can U-turn sweep. That's
yes,
the team's
exactly
ultimate.
that.
Yeah, okay. So body press into the useful Terra Bug. Okay, Kevin's really pulling out all the stops with this Incineroar here, but it looks like it's the Moonblast actually to finish off this Incineroar now, which I do like here. You've been able to deal the damage with your massively powerful Miraidon, but then it's not Miraidon taking the hit, it's the Incineroar in the back instead, which is a really nice synergy for the entirety of Kevin's team.
Yeah, it's really nice here. Dragonite is still the last one coming out for YVAR, and we'll have to choose what it's going to lock into. There's nothing really great into the Lunala because it's stayed as a ghost type now, so if it does lock into extreme speed, that's not going to be able to do anything at all to the Lunala. And then you're stuck with a -2 Zamazenta that can heavy slam it, and that's probably like a 4-hit KO factoring in. It is now -2 from the Incineroar. It kind of has to be extreme speed to deal with the Miraidon that's waiting in the back, but then you have to have the Zamazenta deal with the Lunala, and I don't think it's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't look likely, does it? And so YVAR might be kind of getting into the realms of fishing for critical hits at this point, given Kevin's defensive backbone and how healthy that Miraidon is in the back. But if anything's going to do damage, it is Choice Band, Extreme Speed, Terra Normal boosted Dragonite here. Zamazenta going on the Protect here. And where is this Dragonite going to target? We know it's got to be into that Incineroar, right? This Lunala's already Ghost type. But is it going to be that KO into this defensive cat? Yes, it is.
Yeah, it was. No Sword of Ruin necessary there to be able to pick up that KO. No knockoff to get rid of the Choice Band to reduce the damage. No U-turn to get that Miraidon in. But, of course, Miraidon will be able to switch in here after the Incineroar's KO. Just a Moongeist Beam into the Zamazenta instead of a Moonblast into the opposing Dragonite. Oh, and look at that. Perfect timing for the electric terrain to disappear, because here it is once again.
Yes, perfect for Kevin. Not quite perfect for YVAR. And there it is, just so you cannot even stall out the electric terrain either. Miraidon just really online now to deal all out all the damage it needs. YVAR needs most likely this critical hit from this extreme speed to be able to get this KO. Even then, it may even be close, given any sort of defensively bulk training on this Miraidon here. But it's something that YVAR needs to bank on for him to be able to take this game, because then Zamazenta is the only thing that's going to be able to deal with this Lunala, and if Dragonite doesn't take down Miraidon, Miraidon's going to take down the Zamazenta.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's been outspinning a Chien-Pao, so it's probably not very bulky here, but oh yeah, critical hit would have done it. That was a lot of damage, but it's Electro Drift into the Zamazenta instead, and that is going to seal it now, because the Dragonite locked into extreme speed, it cannot deal with this Lunala at all, and even then, like, the Miraidon's still going to be able to threaten absolutely massive damage. Like, here's the Moonblast, it will do a bit of damage. Like, that's all right. That's like a 3-hit, maybe 4-hit knockout. But the extreme speed is a 0, like an infinite hit knockout, right? So won't be able to break through the Lunala. YVAR's going to realize it, throw in the towel. Kevin Salvetto takes round 2 here in Utrecht.